The conference center in downtown Phoenix was electric with expectation. Every seat in the vast hall, nearly 5,000 of them, was taken, and late arrivals stood pressed against the walls, necks craned. Outside, the city baked in a dry June heat, but inside, the air hummed with anticipation. Tonight's keynote was Robert Kiyosaki, the best-selling author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, known for shaking audiences awake with blunt truths about money and mindset. The marquee billed this talk as Keep Them Poor, a title everyone assumed was clickbait, a provocation to lure streams and shares. No one really knew what Kiyosaki would say, and no one imagined the night would change far more than their views on finance. Among the crowd sat three strangers whose lives were quietly fraying at the edges. Jasmine Lewis, 32, perched in row 19, aisle seat. She was a single mom from Mesa, a registered nurse who juggled double shifts yet still wrestled bills that always seemed to outrun her paycheck. What little free time she had, she spent scrolling TikTok for side hustle hacks, praying one would stick. Her ticket to the event had been a gift from her older brother, who believed inspiration might help her outrun exhaustion. 4 rows behind her sat Anthony Delgado, a lanky first-generation college graduate who had moved from Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria. At 27, Anthony had landed a respectable marketing job but never felt respectable inside. He carried a silent guilt that his parents still lived in a leaky house back on the island. Every month he wired half his paycheck home and lived on ramen and Resolve. When a friend forwarded him a live stream link to Kiyosaki's talk, he bought a last-minute seat instead, anything to find a lever big enough to lift his family's future. Near the back, on a folding chair reserved for volunteers, sat 71-year-old Reverend Samuel Doc Watkins. He wore a threadbare blazer, its elbows shiny with age, and a Peace Corps lapel pin. Doc had spent decades running a tiny food pantry in South Phoenix that kept hundreds of families afloat. Lately, donations had dried up, and tomorrow he would face the landlord with a notice to vacate. He had come tonight not for financial advice, but for a miracle, any spark he could carry home to his community. The lights dimmed. A hush rippled forward. Robert Kiyosaki strode out wearing a black blazer, jeans, and a mischievous grin. Behind him glowed a single slide, giant block letters spelling "Keep Them Poor." A murmur rose, equal parts curiosity and discomfort. Those words, Kiyosaki began, tapping the slide, are the cruelest strategy ever invented, and they're working. He let silence swell. Governments, banks, and even schools are wired to keep most people poor, not necessarily in money but in mindset, because a frightened, scrambling public is easier to control. Tonight, my job is not to make you angry, it's to make you dangerous. Dangerous to a system that thrives on your doubt. The audience leaned forward like sunflowers. For years, he continued, I preached cash flow diagrams, debt leverage, and silver coins. But tonight we'll start somewhere else. Kindness, selflessness, humanity. You see, the system isn't cracked open by bigger wallets, it's shattered by bigger hearts, and I'm going to prove it. Phones shot up to record. Hashtags exploded. Still, no one understood how a finance guru planned to connect balance sheets to benevolence. Kiyosaki snapped his fingers. Stage lights revealed 4 wooden crates at the edge of the platform. Each box, he said, contains $10,000 cash. A gasp. I'm giving it all away before I finish talking, and I'll show you why that scares the system, more than any Bitcoin bull run. He pointed to a random section. Seat B17, whoever you are, come up. The audience craned. Jasmine glanced at her row number, B. Seat? She was 19. B17 was 2 seats to her right. A gray-haired man stood trembling, but Kiyosaki waved him back. Sorry, B17 already moved, let me choose differently. Then he scanned again and locked eyes with Jasmine instead. You, aisle, turquoise scrubs. Yes, you. Her breath vanished. People nudged her until, dazed, she rose and edged toward the stage. Jasmine climbed the steps. Kiyosaki handed her a sealed envelope. $10,000, he announced. She stared, stunned. But there's a catch, he added. You must spend it on others within 48 hours. Family doesn't count. Afterward, send my team proof, photos, receipts, stories. Her lips parted. Her rent overdue, her son's asthma med, yet she had to give it away. The crowd buzzed sympathy. Kiyosaki leaned close so only she could hear. Trust me, power flows through open hands. Jasmine nodded slowly, tears shining, and walked off clutching the envelope like fragile glass. He repeated the ritual. Anthony Delgado's section roared when Kiyosaki selected him. Another envelope, another promise to spend selflessly. The third recipient was a retired public school janitor, and the fourth was Reverend Doc. When Doc's name echoed, he almost didn't rise. He had perfected humility over decades, trained to deflect resources toward others. Now the spotlight found him. Shuffling forward, he accepted the envelope with shaking fingers. 48 hours, Kiyosaki reminded. Change lives, not yours. Doc's mind raced through the pantry ledger, the eviction notice, and the kids who depended on him. He nodded, a prayer and a plan forming simultaneously. With the envelopes delivered, Kiyosaki faced the hall again. Why set this rule? He asked. Because generosity rewires the brain quicker than any seminar. When money moves through you, it changes how you see opportunity. If these 4 people succeed, they'll never view scarcity the same. More crucially, the hundreds of lives they touch will gain not just relief, but proof that strangers care. That terrifies any hierarchy built on division. The next hour was vintage Kiyosaki, stories of his Marine days, failures, and the rat race he vowed to escape. But woven through every anecdote was a refrain. Wealth without kindness is bankruptcy of the soul. He closed with a challenge to the rest of the audience. You didn't get envelopes, but you got the message. Find someone outside your bubble and help. Time, skills, cash, anything. Then watch what multiplies faster, your portfolio or your purpose. The lights rose to a standing ovation that felt less like applause and more like ignition. Outside, night had cooled the sidewalks. Reporters hurried to file stories. Viral clips already rocketed across feeds tagged "Doc Gears keep them poor." But something deeper brewed in the 4 envelope bearers. Jasmine drove straight to the 24-hour supermarket, heart pounding. She pushed a cart aisle to aisle, filling it with diapers, formula, canned soup, oatmeal, items she knew the women's shelter down the street always lacked. At checkout, the total read $942.23. She paid cash from the envelope. Before dawn, she and a bleary security guard unloaded bags at the shelter's door. The director recognized Jasmine. She'd brought patients there after ER discharges. Why? The woman whispered. Jasmine shrugged, tears slipping. Because someone believed I could. Dawn found Jasmine at an all-night diner scribbling lists, homeless outreach programs, the high school band whose instruments were ancient, the free dental clinic begging for supplies. Each name came with a memory of someone she had met in a hospital bed, scared and alone. She delivered groceries, pharmacy vouchers, even bus passes until the envelope lay empty, but her spirit felt strangely full, like breathing without weight on her chest. On the other side of town, Anthony paced his studio apartment staring at the cash on his coffee table. Memories of hurricane-shattered roofs and candlelit nights haunted him. He longed to wire the money home, but that broke the rule. Outside, sirens wailed. Phoenix heat often stirred trouble after dark. Suddenly, Anthony grabbed his laptop and typed, Puerto Rican Community Centers, Phoenix. The search revealed a tiny cultural hub struggling to stay open. Within 2 hours, Anthony arrived with a backpack stuffed with cash and told the director to check off every overdue bill. But he wasn't done. He visited a migrant legal aid office, a youth coding camp, and a rundown basketball court where he slipped envelopes into coaches' hands for new shoes and uniforms. By nightfall, he felt lighter than he had since Maria. Doc Watkins spent sunrise sitting on the cracked concrete outside his pantry, envelope unopened on his lap. Finally, he tore the seal, counted the bills, then laughed, a deep belly laugh that startled pigeons. 10,000 wasn't enough to save every program, yet it was more than he'd ever personally held. He walked inside, dust motes swirling, and taped a handwritten sign to the door. Open house, free groceries all day, no questions asked. Word spread quicker than wildfire. Volunteers he hadn't seen in months returned. Doc used the money to buy truckloads of produce from local farms hit hard by restaurant shutdowns. By evening, the pantry looked like a festival. Music, children with ice pops, sacks of oranges passed hand to hand. A cameraman from a local station wandered in, capturing faces lit by gratitude. The retired janitor, Mrs. Irene Caldwell, chose a different path. She invited the 10 loneliest neighbors in her senior complex to lunch at a small diner, then told the waitress she was paying everyone's bill in the restaurant until funds ran out. Strangers wept into coffee cups. A single mom on her first day off in months had her check covered. A traveling salesman away from home felt suddenly less invisible. Irene went home penniless but carried phone numbers of 6 new friends and an invitation to baby